one thing to have a hobby when you retire, but Jim Hoffman decided to follow in his father's footsteps and build clocks. And not just your typical clock, but one made nearly entirely of wood, even the gears. As a woodworker, he makes not only clocks, but all kinds of knickknacks and curios, from sports boosters and oddities to delicate flowers and furniture. At 82 years young, he has the time and the patience for the intricate work it requires. I caught up with him in his workshop in Hazleton, Kansas.
This is my toucan. I get the design from Clayton Boyer in Hawaii, and it's my pride and joy. It has a magnetic coil in the base, and I make the coil. There's 400 feet of 30 gauge magnet wire on there, and then we put a transistor on here that goes over that right under the pendulum, and then transistor kicks that going. It runs on 9 volts, and this is my jig for making this little magnet coil.
Jim makes everything he can, including the all-important induction coil, not to save money, but to ensure quality.
Normally I lay bed sheets down from here to the north door. That's 50 feet. So I go to the door and back twice, and that's 200 feet.
A copper coil is necessary in this design.
I won't roll much on here, but I'll show you how I do it.
The power going into it produces a magnetic field which pushes the pendulum's base away from it, regardless of its direction. It's this force that keeps it moving in modest, yet efficient perpetuity.
Then you put electrical tape on it and put another 200 feet on. So that takes a little time. Then the bobbin on the back of the clock. There it wobbles. Has a magnet on it. That's the spot. It's quite a chore to get them separated. And it goes in this bobbin that goes on the bottom of the pendulum. You have to adjust up and down. This is threaded, all thread, and you got just the right clearance between the magnet and the coil, and it decided to run this morning. So that's where I spend a lot of my time. At 82 years old, you can't get a job, so I work in my shop. And I'll show you how we cut out some of the gears. I cover the board with painter's tape so that you can get your pattern comes off easy. If you use adhesive on the pattern, it would be difficult to get all of that double stick tape off. I cut 2 of them at a time.
In order to make 2 gears at the same time, Jim has learned that taking a few precautionary steps not only makes a better finished piece of wood, but it also separates from the pattern easier. Making the gears is painstaking work. Often Jim uses a jig for some designs, saving much time and effort.
I learned the hard way that if you don't get that in the center, you need a hole in each space to get the scroll saw blade in.
Jim is using a new reciprocating scroll saw to cut the hardwood gears.
Better start out with a new blade. I'll mess up your life.
It was a recent Christmas present from Pat, his wife of 55 years.
I got this scroll saw for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I surely have enjoyed it and put a lot of hours.
Jim first cuts the excess wood away from the gear. Then he starts the exacting process of cutting the gear teeth, one tooth at a time. Any irregularities in the finished cut may prevent the clock from operating properly, causing the clock to stall or lose time.
We cut out a circle.
The next step in making a gear is to cut away excess wood, making the gear lighter, which in turn makes the clock more efficient.
That's how the wheels are cut out. Well, there we go. Throw it. Let's see. I do have some spare gears, a lot of spare parts really. You put an 1/8 of an inch bit in the router, and this is an 1/8 of an inch guide. You put your plywood, screw plywood on the bottom of the pattern, and come down in the template, and then you can cut your gears. I made 10 or 15 of them, and this is where I spend my time, working in the shop.
In fact, Jim's shop was once a restaurant. His father made modifications to the storage area. Complete with a metal ceiling and a dining area with checkerboard floors, his workshop is in what was once the kitchen. He has been asked many times if he would sell the metal ceiling, which is quite valuable. With his wry humor, he says that he'd give it away for free if they'll replace it with drywall.
This is an interesting little piece that I made for my wife. The first one I made, I said I'm not going to make another one because it takes so much time. This is how the pedals are made. You cut these little lines, you turn it, cut out the heart, and you have a pedal. Then the side pieces of the base, in order to get a good straight fold, I use this tape measure. Then we need a little adhesive. You get your fingers messy when you use this spray adhesive. and then put it right on that line. So you cut out the holes to start the scroll saw, and cut the holes out on the inside, cut the outside of the piece and tape it together, and then cut the outside. And you have one piece for the base.
After a morning of woodworking, Jim heads home for a break. Fortunately, his workshop is right across from his home, which makes it handy when he needs a snack or just wants to spend time with his wife.
Sorry about that.
Did I rush you? This is my wife, Pat.
Hi.
Been my wife for 55 years
Plus.
plus. This is some of Pat's creation. This was a brick out of the Methodist church and part of the shingles. This was the baseboard in the church. And
The little tile over here was tile from the floor. This is rock that came out of the foundation of the church. And this is the key to the back door of the church. And if you have a birdhouse, you have to have a feeder, bird feeder. And in the front, a little bird bath.
In addition to crafts, Pat has an extensive figurine collection too.
This is a collection of pie birds. This little boy right here was my very first one. And I have almost 40 now. Then the juicers, the clown was my first one. Bought that at an auction. And I think it's probably the most rare. The others I have just bought and they've all been new. And these are almost antique because we got these at our wedding. We were married in September of 1958.
Jim's love of clocks probably comes from his own father, who was also a woodworker. In fact, he made a grandfather clock for each of his children. This one is Jim's.
He built one clock for each of us 5 kids, and built one for Mom. He built one for our niece in Houston. So he was a woodworker like I am. This was a clock that my dad made for my mom. He took pictures of it in a furniture store and took some measurements and came home and made it without a plan. So that was quite an accomplishment.
But not all of Jim's clocks work like, well, clockwork. One in particular gives him fits.
It's just given me a lot of trouble. And I've taken it apart, sanded on the gears, I suppose 100 times, and I'll win the battle someday.
Jim has had practice battling things before, beginning with his life. When born nearly 8 weeks premature, the delivery nurse put him in a shoebox by a window to die. When Margaret Rose, his mother, inquired to the whereabouts of her newborn, the nurse showed her the shoebox. Margaret Rose screamed at the nurse, "You had better figure out a way to feed him," and they did. One of the rare instances of premature survival. Another difficult clock to make. Jim hopes one day to make this one tick forever.
It's a 1700 design, and there again it gives me a little bit of trouble, but it'll run till this gear turns one round, so there must be just one tooth that's catching. This is the hour wheel, and it's not connected except with the string that goes down to the weight. I thought that was quite unique.
Gears need to be precise fits. If the pitch, faces, and lands aren't dimensionally equally correct, the clock will stall. Jim keeps whittling away at this one.
I have a friend that gives me the walnut for all of my projects, and we get some really pretty wood. A friend called him one day and said, "I've got all this walnut in the barn and I'm going to tear the barn down. You need to take this walnut and do something with it." So that's quite a friend to give me that much walnut.
And just are what some of the things he does with that extra walnut he gets?
This vase is made from 7x7 pieces of walnut, and when you glue it together, you put a tiny drop of glue on these points. I'll show you how I round the edges on the router. Nice round edge. There's a lot of edges that have to be smoothed up. It's done. We could glue one ring on. Rather difficult to keep from getting too much glue on there. I've got to put it on there to make sure where the glue goes, because it changes as you go up. Well, we might paint one of these, put lacquer on it, take this a little bit. I use lacquer almost on everything. I like lacquer because it's got a good finish, it's hard, and it dries fast.
And when Jim gets bored making clocks, he makes, well, other things.
So these are just scraps they throw in the dumpster, and I can use them kind of like material. But I put a piece of aluminum under it and a piece of board to back it up, fasten them together, and you can cut that fine aluminum that way. And this is for one of my KU fans. And I want to show you this. This is rather deceiving. It looks like it's woven, but it's made with individual pieces. And this is a tree topper, and this is how it's cut out. This is the bottom shelf.
Jim is also a fine furniture maker. Here, made for his son Kerry, is a coffee table with a retractable top. He is helping Jim with the staining of it. Kerry, who works as an audio engineer for the Royals, will take it back to Kansas City with him.
A buddy of mine had a table a lot like this, and I just thought it was so neat that it would tilt up and you could use it to set a laptop on and sit at the couch, or if you wanted to put a TV dinner there, put the plate on it, just play card games on it. It was a really slick design.
At 83, Jim just wants to keep busy. He's seen a lot, he's done a lot, he has more to accomplish.
I was born in '32, so I've seen a little bit of history. Been a couple of years in the service. I went to Italy and Austria. I was in a private room downtown Salzburg, Austria, working for the Army.